All right. So now I want to try and remember. First, just say a bit about yourself, like introduce yourself.
Yeah, my name is Sean Choolburra. I studied dancing at a dance college in Sydney called NAISDA, which stands for the National Aboriginal Islander Skills Development Association. I studied ballet, jazz, tap, modern dance, and then we also at the dance college, because of its background, we studied traditional Aboriginal and Torres Strait Island dancing. Probably been dancing for about 30 years, started at around 12 or 14 years old. Started hip-hop, you know, hip-hop was my first style of dance I learnt, and breaking. And
where did you, so as a 14-year-old,
yeah,
where did you go to learn, like what did you do to learn breaking?
Well, I grew up in Townsville, North Queensland, and it was on the news, and they said this is the new dance craze that's come out of New York City, and had this little black kid, and he was doing this move like this, the elevator walk or whatever, and I watched that and I thought, man, how cool is that? So we all went automatically, the next day went downstairs and we just practiced these moves, and it was on TV, then it was on video clips, and then we saw the kids down and these other group of kids that were actually doing it as well, and they were doing it to Malcolm McLaren's Buffalo Stance and Grandmaster Flash music and stuff like that, and we sort of got right into it, and it was just purely from watching what we saw on TV, and it was like the music video clips or even the TV shows or movies like Beat Street and breakdance as well, yeah, and we sort of got right in, because it was an epidemic that kind of swept the world, hip-hop, you know, and it just went off, you know, and you know, here we were, all these Aboriginal kids just studying and learning hip-hop and breakdancing and learning the slangs and learning the whole jargon of it, and dressing up the same and all, yeah.
And you said yesterday in your set,
yeah,
was it true, like your grandfather was like, oh, why are you doing this rap dancing, why are you wearing,
yeah,
like, and so, is that true?
Yeah, it's kind of always been like a threat that, you know, like a lot of older generation Australians, you know, they see all the kids, you know, being all hip-hoppy and all into the fashion and stuff like that, and you know, and all it was just a reflection of who we were, our skin colours and things like that, that we grew up with. You know, in Australia it was kind of rock music or country music, and you had a lot of older folk or older parents and grandparents who listened to country music, and a lot of the new and younger generation went right into it. Like, and for hip hop music, they saw a music and a look, and you know, that reflected themselves, you know, and they just saw kids that looked like them, and you know, as well, and a dance style that was funky. It wasn't hillbilly, you know, and things like that, and it was just you know, and that's kind of how it came. And as for the older generation, they always kind of saw it as a threat to Australia's cultural identity, not realizing my old granddad, who wore a big cowboy belt buckle, cowboy boots and cowboy hat, watching old Hollywood, you know, Western movies and stuff like that, not realizing there's actually influences going on right there. You know, that a lot of, you know, that whole cowboy type image is going on, you know, sort of thing. So, you know, like, it was just, you know, we all got into the hip hop, and it was just, you know, as I got older and older, you know, obviously I realized, you know, like, you know, the whole theory behind b-boying is, you know, you got to create your own stuff. You know, you got to be an individual and creating your own dance moves and stuff like that. So it was a mix of mixing. For me, at the moment, I do didgeridoo beatboxing, which is not common. Like, you can go anywhere in the world and everyone beatboxes, all that kind of stuff. So what I done was I brought didgeridoo into it, traditional, you know, instrument. That's been around for millions of years, and the rhythms that we play, the rhythm, because it's an instrument, it's a wind instrument. It's related to, you know, the trumpets and all that. Probably got different, mummy, but anyway, it's a wind instrument, and it's related to all of that. But when you play it percussively, which is strange, you know. So we're playing this wind instrument, but we actually going. Now, if people like Dougie Fresh do that, it's called beatboxing. But if people like myself do it, people go, oh, that's his culture. So it was just these rhythms that, you know, like that we actually play through this didgeridoo instrument. and that we're mimicking every sound effect going, whether it's birds, whether it's beats or rhythms and things like that, and ultimately it's all the same.
And so then so at 14 you big into hip hop.
Yep.
But at the same time, were you always learning traditional dancing, or was it later that you kind of?
It was
like, when did that come into it?
Later on, you know, because hip hop really influenced me as a dancer, you know, and things like that. It was kind of like a mix. Like, loved the hip hop. I loved really that, you know, the old school. Like, I grew up listening to Grandmaster Flash, you know, and Melly Mel, you know, and that really old school hip hop, Spoonie G, Houdini, and all this kind of stuff. But at the same time, I love Prince music, you know, which is kind of funny, yeah. But it wasn't until like my sister told me that I should study dance. My older sister, who was at a dance college in Sydney. So it wasn't until I was about 21 I decided to move to Sydney. I studied at a performing arts school. The school I went to, it was set up by a lady named Carol Johnson, who created the dance theatre. Its sister company.
Can you tell me a tiny bit about Carol Johnson, just quickly?
Yeah, Carol Johnson came out in the late 60s, early 70s, and realised that Australia needed a black theatre and set up a black theatre. And
she was from?
Harlem, and she was from New York, yeah, and she created NAISDA, or back then it was the AIDT, the Aboriginal Island Dance Theatre, and you had people like herself and a few other people, other Aboriginal guys named Bobby Mazza and so on. These guys all set up the black theatre, and they thought that Australia needed a black theatre, and having Aboriginal actors, Aboriginal musos and dancers and stuff like that. And obviously, you know, its sister company, whatever you want to call it, was the Harlem Theatre and Alvin Ailey Dance Company as well. And so yeah, that's where we would study dancing as jazz, tap, ballet. We'd have lots of really top class dancers from around Australia who were really top dancers would come in and teach us dance, and they were our dance teachers. And then you'd have the odd visiting dance company, whether it's from South Africa or America or Russia or whatever, and they're passing through. So they would drop into the dance school because of the dance community out there, you know, everyone, you know, and they would come and give us all free tickets, and at the same time they would do a show for us, and we'd do vice versa. We'd show them a traditional Aboriginal dance and Islander dance performance.
And so is that when you started learning traditional dance there?
Yeah, I sort of looked at it more and more, you know, I looked at more of exploring traditional dance, you know, and that kind of stuff, and really loving and embracing it as much as I embraced hip hop, you know, and really looking at the traditional dance. And obviously, because it was far more older than hip hop, you know, it's an ancient tradition from my grandparents, their grandparents, their grandparents, and so on and so on and so on. So I thought it needed to be maintained, it needed to be taught and educated, and I needed to hold this sort of information and learn it and study it myself, and pass it on to my children, my grandchildren, and so on as well. And you know, and that's kind of you know, how it sort of evolved, you know, where sort of here I was working around Australia or even traveling parts of the world doing traditional dance, and I set up a dance company in Sydney, and we were an Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander dance company where we do just mainly traditional dance. But at the same time, we all loved hip-hop dancing, so we'd actually mix it up. So we thought, well, look, we can't compete with the Joffrey Ballet or, you know, the Bangarra Dance Company, who were an Aboriginal ballet company, you know, who were really professional modern dancers who really mastered that, you know. And I thought a lot of us were, you know, street trained, you know, like a lot of us were just raw hip-hop dancers. So we thought one thing you know, people would love was you know, obviously the traditional dance, but the hip-hop dance, like, don't get me wrong, the old people love hip-hop dance too, you know what I mean? Like, we would go to communities and we'd be rolling around on the floor doing all this modern dancing, and the old people would be like, what the hell is this dance, you know? You know, this ain't black people dance, you know, that kind of stuff, you know? All this lifting each other up and spinning each other around in tights and running around, pointing our feet and stuff like that. And so they would always say to me, because I was always the only hip-hop dancer around, they go, Shawnee, go out and do some hip-hop. You know, so put on some funky beats, and and all the old people would smile and go, man, look at the move, we stop that. You know, and that's kind of how I really embraced it, because I thought, look, out of all the art forms out there, I think dance is probably, you know, they're one of the most powerfulest, you know. And I, after my dance career, I've sort of moved into more of stand-up comedy. But because I have a dance background, it's like if you were to watch any comedian with a musical background, whether it's Jamie Foxx, who can sing and play piano and play music and that, it's exactly what I do with stand-up comedy. I dance in my comedy because, you know, I have a degree in dance and that, and you know, I'm also a musician with, you know, the Aboriginal didgeridoo as well.
And you were saying that at school you'd have like a 2-week intensive with people, with elders that would come and teach you?
Yeah, we would have all these traditional dance teachers who would come from, you know, various parts of Australia and come for like 2 weeks intense studying, and we would be doing it pretty much all day, even into the night, and we would be studying everything to do around with culture and music, you know, and dancing, and
then you'd go.
And we'd go back to some of these communities, and we would actually share with them their own dances in these communities. And you'd have kids who grew up with watching these dances, and then you'd have a bunch of you know, students from Sydney at a dance college all come and do their dance, and they'd be like, "Where these guys learn that?" You know, and they'd be like freaked out and fascinated that we could actually do it and do it as well, because ultimately we had all the same teachers. You know, and I think, you know, we certainly would always put smiles on everyone's faces in the community, right up from elders right down to little babies. Yeah. And
can you tell me that time when you were in the Bronx and you were dancing?
Well, you know, I again, after 20 odd years, decided to set up my own dance company again, and we've called the Black Cockatoo Dance Company. We all flew to New York. We launched the Black Cockatoo Dance Company at the United Nations Forums on Indigenous People. We opened that, then we did various gigs in New York City, and on our last day, just before we went to the airport, we went to the Bronx, and we did a show there, and we were all painted up in Aboriginal paint and all that, and we did a traditional dance show for all the First Nations people, and there was various First Nation people from, you know, that make up the community of the Bronx, you know, and we were there, and here we are doing a kangaroo dance, and I'm scratching away doing my kangaroo dance, you know, I'm looking at all these buildings, and I go, man, I know these buildings from watching Beach Street, you know, because I'm an old B-boy from way back, you know, so here I am doing this kangaroo dance, you know, like, I just thought it was the funniest thing that, you know, I grew up, it was like a full circle, you know, like here I was, grew up watching Beach Street and hip-hop dance come out in New York City, and I've come back around 30-something years later, and I'm here in the middle of the Bronx doing a kangaroo dance, and my culture got me there to, yeah,
that's awesome.
And somewhere that's a lot of dance crazes have come out of, yeah.
Awesome, thank you so very much, that was just awesome.